The phone rang at 2:47 inches the morning. I knew before I picked it up that nothing good ever comes from a call at that hour. My hand trembled as I reached for it in the darkness, knocking over the glass of water I kept on my nightstand. The cold liquid spread across the wood, but I barely noticed. 3 rings. 4. On the 5th, I answered. Hello? My voice came out rough, thick with interrupted sleep and the remnants of a dream I couldn't quite remember. Is this Robert Harrison? A woman's voice, professional but gentle. The kind of tone they teach nurses and social workers when they have to deliver news that will shatter someone's world. Yes. Who is this? Mr. Harrison. My name is Dr. Patricia Chen. I'm calling from the Royal Alexandra Hospital in Edmonton. I apologize for the early hour, but we have a situation here that requires your immediate attention. Edmonton. That was 3 hours north of Calgary. I sat up, fully awake now, my heart starting to hammer against my ribs. What kind of situation? There was a pause. In that silence, I heard papers rustling, someone speaking in the background, the distant beep of hospital equipment. Mr. Harrison, we have a patient here, a woman. She was brought in yesterday evening after a car accident. Minor injuries, nothing life-threatening, but during the examination and interview. Another pause. Sir, she claims to be your daughter. The room tilted. I gripped the phone so hard I heard the plastic creak. I don't have a daughter, I said automatically. The words were ash in my mouth. She says her name is Sophie Harrison, born April 12th, 1988. She says she was 9 years old when she went missing from Fish Creek Park in Calgary on June 14th, 1997. June 14th, 1997. 27 years, 5 months, and 18 days ago. But who was counting? That's not possible, I whispered. Sophie is dead. We buried her in 2002. I understand this must be incredibly difficult, Mr. Harrison. But this woman has very specific information. Details about her childhood, about you, about her life before she disappeared. We've run preliminary checks, and we believe this warrants further investigation. Would you be able to come to Edmonton? I should have said no. I should have told her it was a cruel hoax, a scam, a case of mistaken identity. Sophie had been gone for almost 3 decades. I'd held her funeral. I'd lowered her casket into the ground at Queen's Park Cemetery while rain poured down and my wife Sarah sobbed against my chest. That was 6 months before Sarah's own funeral, before the cancer took her too, leaving me with nothing but memories and photographs and a bedroom that had been sealed shut for 22 years. I'll be there in 3 hours, I heard myself say. I didn't go back to sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed as the darkness outside slowly gave way to the gray light of a November dawn, and I let myself remember what I'd spent nearly 3 decades trying to forget. Sophie had been 9 years old that summer. 9 years old with gap-toothed grin and scraped knees, and a voice that could shatter glass when she laughed. She'd wanted a red bicycle for her birthday, the kind with the white basket on the front and the streamers on the handlebars. We'd saved for months, Sarah and I, putting aside money from my firefighter's salary until we could afford the exact one she'd circled in the Canadian Tire flyer. She'd been so happy when we gave it to her. She'd named it Cherry, like Cherry Red, Daddy. She'd practiced for hours in our driveway, me jogging beside her, one hand on the seat to keep her steady, until finally she'd gotten the hang of it and pedaled away from me, training wheels wobbling, blonde ponytail flying behind her. 2 months later, she'd ridden Cherry to Fish Creek Park. I'd been on shift that day. Sarah had taken Sophie to the park, the way she did most Saturday afternoons in the summer. It was tradition. Pack a lunch, bring a book. Let Sophie run wild on the playground while Sarah read in the shade. They knew everyone there. It was safe. Calgary was safe. Fish Creek Park was safe. Except it wasn't. Sarah had looked away for just a moment. 5 minutes, she'd said later, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. Maybe 10. She'd been reading, and when she looked up, Sophie was gone. The red bicycle was still there, lying on its side near the playground. Sophie's little purple backpack was still hanging from the handlebars. But Sophie herself had vanished. The search had been massive. As a firefighter, I knew people. Half the fire department had shown up on their days off. Police officers, park rangers, volunteers. We'd combed every inch of that park, then expanded the search to the surrounding areas. Dogs, helicopters, news crews. Sophie's picture on every telephone pole, every store window, every television screen in Alberta. Nothing. For 5 years, we'd lived in that purgatory, not knowing, hope and despair trading places every single day. Sarah had never been the same after that afternoon. The guilt had eaten her alive from the inside out, even though I'd told her 1,000 times it wasn't her fault. What kind of world do we live in where you can't look away for 5 minutes? Then in 2002, hikers had found remains in a wooded area near Bragg Creek, about an hour west of Calgary. Small bones, scraps of purple fabric, a child's shoe. The DNA testing back then wasn't what it is now. The remains had been exposed to the elements for years, but the lab had given us a 68% match. The forensic anthropologist had said the age and size were consistent. The purple fabric matched Sophie's backpack. It had been enough. Enough for the police to close the case. Enough for us to finally have something to bury. Enough for me to stand beside a small white casket and say goodbye to my little girl. Sarah had died 8 months later. The doctors said it was ovarian cancer, but I knew better. She'd died of a broken heart. She'd just been waiting, I think, until we had somewhere to visit Sophie, somewhere to bring flowers. Once we had that, she'd let go. I'd been alone ever since. 62 years old, retired from the fire department for 7 years now, living in the same house where Sophie had learned to walk and talk and ride a bike. Her bedroom was exactly as she'd left it that Saturday morning. I'd open the door once a year on her birthday, just to stand there and remember. The posters on her wall had faded, the stuffed animals on her bed had gathered dust, but everything was exactly where it had been on June 14th, 1997. And now, someone was telling me she was alive. I made coffee I didn't drink. I showered and dressed mechanically. At 5:30, before the sun was fully up, I got in my truck and started driving north on Highway 2 toward Edmonton. The drive passed in a blur. I'd made this trip dozens of times over the years for various reasons, but I couldn't remember a single moment of it now. My mind kept circling back to the same impossible thought. What if? What if the DNA test had been wrong? What if those bones had belonged to some other poor child? What if Sophie had been alive all this time, and I'd buried a stranger? What if I'd given up on her? I arrived at the Royal Alexandra Hospital just after 8:30. The morning was cold and gray, the kind of November day that promised snow. I sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady my breathing. Finally, I forced myself to get out and walk inside. Dr. Chen met me in the lobby. She was younger than I'd expected from her voice, maybe in her mid-40s, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Mr. Harrison, thank you for coming so quickly. I know this must be overwhelming. Where is she? Before you see her, I need to prepare you. She's been through significant trauma. She has scars, both physical and psychological. Her memories are fragmented, and she's struggling with the realization of how much time has passed. We have a counselor with her now. What happened to her?" Dr. Chen's expression tightened. "That's still being investigated. She's given statements to the police, but the details are difficult. What I can tell you is that she was held against her will for many years. She only managed to escape 6 months ago, but she's been living on the streets, afraid to come forward because she didn't think anyone would believe her. The accident yesterday, getting hit by a car while crossing the street, that's what brought her to us. Once we started asking questions, the story came out. My hands were shaking. And you think she's really Sophie? I think you need to decide that for yourself. But Mr. Harrison, the things she knows, they're very specific. Details that wouldn't be public record. She led me through a maze of hallways to a private room on the 3rd floor. At the door, she paused. "Take your time. There's no rush." I stood there for a long moment, my hand on the door handle, terrified of what I might find on the other side. Then I pushed it open. The woman in the bed was small, thin, with long, dark blonde hair that needed cutting and eyes that had seen too much. She was hooked up to an IV, her left arm in a sling, bruises shadowing her face. She looked up when I entered, and those eyes, gray-blue, the exact shade of Sarah's eyes, locked onto mine. We stared at each other. She was too old. Sophie had been 9. This woman was in her 30s, with lines around her eyes and a hardness to her expression that came from years of survival, but something in her face, the shape of her chin, the way her mouth curved. "Dad?" Her voice was small, uncertain, afraid. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. She started crying, silent tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I've been gone so long. I tried to come back. I tried so many times, but he said you thought I was dead, that you'd had a funeral, that there was no point because you'd moved on and forgotten about me." "Who said that?" I managed to ask. "The man who took me." Her voice was barely a whisper. "He kept me for so long, Dad. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I moved toward the bed without deciding to, my legs carrying me forward on their own. This woman, this stranger with my daughter's eyes, flinched slightly when I got close, and that small movement broke something inside me. "Don't be sorry," I said, my voice cracking. "You have nothing to be sorry for. I wanted to come home. Every single day, I wanted to come home." I sat down in the chair beside her bed, close but not touching, giving her space. "Tell me something only Sophie would know." She wiped at her eyes with her good hand. "You're going to test me." "I have to." She nodded, understanding. "Okay. You're a firefighter. Or you were. Station 36. Your helmet was black and yellow, and you let me wear it once when I visited you at the station. It was so heavy I could barely hold my head up, and everyone laughed. But you said I'd grow into it one day." That was true. But it could have been in old news articles, in family photos that had been shared during the search. What else? She closed her eyes, thinking. "We had a fort. In the living room, you helped me build it out of blankets and couch cushions. We called it Fort Sophie. You said every princess needed a castle, so we made one. And we'd sit inside with flashlights and eat popcorn, and you'd tell me stories about fighting fires and saving people." My throat tightened. We'd done that dozens of times. But again, Sarah could have mentioned it in interviews. It could have been something the police knew. "You need to give me something better than that." Her eyes opened, and there was hurt there, but also determination. "The song." "What song?" "The one you always sang in the car. The one Mom hated because she said it was annoying, but you sang it anyway because it made me laugh. The Log Driver's Waltz. You'd do the whole thing with the funny voices and everything, and I'd sing along even though I didn't know all the words. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. The Log Driver's Waltz. An old Canadian folk song that most people under 50 had never heard of. But my grandfather had sung it to me, and I'd sung it to Sophie. It had been our thing, our private joke. Sarah had rolled her eyes every time, but Sophie had loved it. She'd make me sing it over and over on long drives, both of us belting out the chorus about burling down and down, while Sarah pretended to be annoyed. I'd never told anyone about that song. Not the police, not the reporters. It wasn't in any interview or article. It was just ours. "Sing it," I whispered. "Sing the chorus." She looked at me for a long moment. Then, in a soft, trembling voice, she sang, "For he goes burling down, and down white water. That's where the log driver learns to step lightly." I couldn't hold it together anymore. The tears came hot and fast, and I leaned forward, my head in my hands, and I sobbed like I hadn't sobbed since Sarah's funeral. "It's you," I choked out. "Oh God, it's really you." "Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Sophie. I looked for you. For 5 years, I never stopped looking. And then when they found..." I couldn't finish the sentence. "The bones weren't mine," she said quietly. "They told you they were, but they weren't. I know that now. Are you angry that I didn't find you sooner?" I looked up at her, this woman who was my daughter, who'd been 9 years old the last time I'd seen her, and was now 36, and I saw all the years of pain and fear and trauma written across her face. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not angry. I'm just grateful you're here now." She reached out her good hand, hesitant, like she wasn't sure she was allowed. I took it, carefully, mindful of the IV, and held it between both of mine. Tell me about the bicycle, I said. A tiny smile appeared on her face. The first I'd seen. Cherry. The red one with the white basket. I loved that bike so much. You named it Cherry. Because it was cherry red. The smile faded. It was still there when he took me. At the park. I'd just gotten off to get a drink of water from the fountain, and he came up behind me and put something over my face. Something that smelled weird. And when I woke up, I was in the back of a van and everything hurt and I was so scared. You don't have to talk about it now. I want to. I need to tell someone. The police already took my statement. But I need you to know. She took a shaky breath. He kept me in a basement. For years, he moved around a lot, different cities, but always a basement. He told me my parents didn't want me anymore, that they'd forgotten about me. Then later, when I was maybe 13 or 14, he showed me a newspaper article about remains being found. About a funeral. He said you thought I was dead, and there was no point trying to escape because you wouldn't believe me anyway. The rage that went through me in that moment was so intense, I thought I might black out. If the man who'd taken her had been in that room, I would have killed him with my bare hands. Where is he now? I asked through clenched teeth. Dead. He died 2 years ago. Heart attack. That's when I finally got away. I found his wallet, took money, broke a window, and ran. But by then I'd been gone so long, I didn't know how to come back. I didn't know if you'd believe me. I was afraid you'd think I was lying, trying to scam you or something, so I just drifted, moved around. Tried to figure out how to be a person again. Why didn't you come home? I was going to. I was in Calgary 3 months ago. I drove past our old house. You still live there. You saw me? I saw you working in the front yard. You looked older, but I knew it was you. I sat in my car for an hour trying to work up the courage to knock on the door. But I was so scared you wouldn't believe me. So scared you'd call the police and they'd think I was crazy. And then I just left. I drove away. I've been regretting it ever since. I squeezed her hand. I would have believed you. The second you mentioned that song, I would have known. Really? Really. Dr. Chen knocked and entered, holding a tablet. I hate to interrupt, but I wanted to let you both know that we've expedited the DNA test. We should have preliminary results by tomorrow morning. Full results in 3 days. Mr. Harrison, you gave a sample when you arrived? I nodded. They'd swabbed my cheek in the lobby before I'd come up to the room. Good. That should give us definitive answers. She looked at Sophie. How are you feeling? Pain level? I'm okay. Better now. After Dr. Chen left, Sophie and I sat in silence for a while. There was so much to say, so many years to account for, that it seemed impossible to know where to start. Mom, Sophie finally said. Is she? She passed away in 2003. Cancer. The grief that crossed Sophie's face was profound. She never knew I was alive. No. But she never stopped loving you. She never stopped hoping. Even after we buried those remains, part of her never accepted it. She used to say she could still feel you out there somewhere. I wish I could have seen her again. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. The day stretched on. A police detective came and went, taking more statements, asking more questions. Apparently they were already investigating, trying to trace back where Sophie had been held, whether there were other victims. The dead kidnapper's name was Gerald Reeves, a name that meant nothing to me, but that would be burned into my memory forever now. By evening, exhausted from the emotion of it all, Sophie was starting to fade. The doctors wanted to keep her for observation for a few more days, monitoring the concussion from the car accident and making sure her psychological state was stable. I should probably find a hotel, I said, standing up to leave. Let you get some rest. Will you come back tomorrow? I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here when you wake up. Promise? The fact that she had to ask broke my heart all over again. I promise. I've waited 27 years to find you. I'm not leaving now. That night, in a cheap hotel room near the hospital, I called my brother Marcus in Vancouver and told him everything. He didn't believe me at first, thought I was having some kind of breakdown, but eventually I convinced him it was real. Jesus Christ, Rob, what are the odds? I don't know. I don't care. She's here. She's alive. What happens now? I don't know that either. The DNA test will confirm it. Then, I guess we figure out how to rebuild a life that was stolen from us. Does she want to come back to Calgary? I hadn't even thought that far ahead. I don't know. We haven't talked about it. Well, you've got family here if you need anything. Sarah's parents, are they still alive? Her mother is. In the care home. Dementia. She barely knows her own name anymore. Probably for the best, then. This would be too much for her. I lay awake most of the night, staring at the ceiling, my mind refusing to shut down. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sophie as she'd been 9 years old with a gap-toothed smile. And then I saw her as she was now broken and scarred, but miraculously, impossibly alive. The DNA results came back the next morning. 99.7% match. Dr. Chen delivered the news with a smile, and I watched Sophie's whole body relax, like she'd been holding her breath, waiting for confirmation that she wasn't crazy, that she really was who she remembered being. It's official, Dr. Chen said. Sophie Harrison, welcome home. Over the next few days, as Sophie recovered in the hospital, we started the long process of getting to know each other again. It was strange and painful and beautiful all at once. She asked about her childhood, testing her fragmented memories against my intact ones. I filled in the gaps where I could, showed her photos on my phone, told her stories about her mother. She told me about the years in captivity, though not all of it. Some things were too dark, too painful. The police had given her a therapist, and she was working through the trauma one session at a time. But I got enough of the picture to understand what she'd survived, and it made me sick to my core. I used to imagine you coming to rescue me, she said one afternoon, like you did in your firefighter stories. You'd kick down the door and carry me out, and everything would be okay again. I wish I had. I wish I'd found you. You couldn't have known. The police searched everywhere. He was careful. He moved around, used fake names, paid for everything in cash. They're still trying to track down all the places he kept me. On the 4th day, when the doctors cleared her for discharge, I drove her back to Calgary. She was quiet on the drive south, staring out the window at the familiar landscape of Alberta highways and prairie sky. It looks the same, she said as we got closer to the city. I thought everything would have changed, but it looks exactly the same. Some things change. Some things don't. When we pulled up in front of the house, the same house she'd left from 27 years ago, she started crying again. I'd learned over the past few days that she cried easily, that trauma had left her emotions close to the surface. I didn't mind. After so many years of holding everything in, crying seemed healthy. Do you want to come inside? I asked. Or is it too much? I want to see it. I helped her out of the truck. Her ribs were still sore from the accident, and we walked up the driveway together. The house needed painting. The garden needed weeding. But it was home. Inside, nothing had changed much. Same furniture, same photos on the walls, same smell of coffee and old wood, and the life I'd been living alone for so many years. Sophie moved through the rooms slowly, touching things. The back of the couch, the kitchen counter, the banister on the stairs. My room, she said, looking up at the 2nd floor. Is it? Exactly as you left it. I'd unlocked the door that morning before leaving for Edmonton, the first time I'd left it unlocked in 27 years. Sophie climbed the stairs ahead of me, moving toward the 2nd door on the left with the purple nameplate that still said Sophie's room in faded stick-on letters. She pushed the door open and stood in the doorway, frozen. The room was a time capsule. Posters of horses and kittens on the walls, shelves full of stuffed animals and books, the bedspread with the rainbow pattern, her desk with her colored pencils and half-finished drawings still scattered across it. You kept it, she whispered. I couldn't change it. It felt like giving up. She walked in slowly, picking up a stuffed bear from the bed. Mr. Snuggles. Oh my God, I forgot about Mr. Snuggles. You slept with him every night until you were 8. Then you decided you were too old for stuffed animals, but you kept him on your bed anyway. She hugged the bear to her chest, and I saw her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I left her there for a while, went downstairs to give her privacy. When she came down an hour later, her eyes were red, but she seemed calmer. Thank you, she said, for keeping it all, For not giving up. I never gave up. I just accepted the wrong evidence. The police want to exhume the remains that were buried. Find out who they really were. Give that family closure, too. That's good. Someone deserves to know. What happens now, Dad? I mean, I'm 36 years old. I don't know how to be your daughter anymore. I don't know how to be anybody. I thought about that for a long moment. I think we figure it out together. One day at a time. There's no handbook for this. I don't want to be a burden. You could never be a burden. This is your home. For as long as you want it to be. She nodded, wiping at her eyes again. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'd like that. That evening, I made dinner. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and garlic bread. Basic stuff I knew how to cook. Sophie set the table without being asked, moving around the kitchen like the layout was coming back to her in pieces. As we sat down to eat, she suddenly smiled. Remember pancakes? What about pancakes? Saturday morning pancakes. With real maple syrup, not the fake stuff. And bacon. Really crispy bacon. You used to make them every Saturday morning. I did remember. It had been tradition. Saturday mornings, I'd be off shift, and I'd make a huge stack of pancakes, while Sophie and Sarah slept in. By the time they came downstairs, the whole house would smell like maple and bacon. You want pancakes? I asked. Is it Saturday? Does it matter? She grinned, and for just a second, I saw my 9-year-old daughter looking back at me. No, it doesn't matter at all. So we left the spaghetti, and I pulled out the pancake mix, and the maple syrup and the bacon, and I made pancakes at 7 o'clock on a Thursday evening, while Sophie sat at the kitchen counter and told me about her favorite memory of those Saturday mornings. You always made them too big, she said. Like, as big as the whole pan. And Mom would say you were going to make us all fat, but she'd eat 3 of them anyway. Your mother had a sweet tooth she pretended she didn't have. I miss her. I miss her too. Every day. The pancakes were perfect. The bacon was crispy. The maple syrup was real. Canadian maple. The expensive kind I only bought for special occasions. We sat at the kitchen table. The same table where we'd eaten 1,000 meals as a family. And we ate pancakes and talked about nothing and everything. The years stretched between us, vast and painful. But in that moment, with the smell of breakfast food filling the kitchen, and Sophie laughing at a story I was telling about a call I'd had at the fire station, it felt like maybe, possibly, we could find our way back to each other. Dad, Sophie said as I was clearing the plates. Yeah? Thank you for making pancakes. I looked at her, this woman who'd survived hell and found her way home, and I felt my eyes burn with tears again. Anytime, sweetheart, I said. Anytime you want. That night, Sophie slept in her old room for the first time in 27 years. I lay in my own bed, unable to sleep, listening to the sounds of someone else in the house. Footsteps in the hallway, water running in the bathroom, the creak of bed springs as she settled in. I'd been alone for so long. I'd gotten used to the silence, the emptiness. But now, with Sophie home, the house felt alive again, like it had been holding its breath all these years, waiting for her to come back. I didn't know what the future held. There would be therapy and police investigations and probably media attention once word got out. There would be hard days and setbacks and moments when the trauma was too much for her to handle. There would be questions I couldn't answer and wounds I couldn't heal. But she was home. After 27 years, my daughter was home. And that was enough. That was everything. In the darkness of my bedroom, I closed my eyes, and finally, for the first time in nearly 3 decades, I slept without dreaming of what I'd lost. Because it turned out I hadn't lost it after all. Sophie was alive. Sophie was home. And tomorrow, we'd figure out what came next. Together.